and welcome back to Get Around to It, the culture podcast for curious people, presented by me, Aoife Barry.
And me, Lauren Murphy. We're so delighted to be back after a lengthy break and to be here in the lovely studios in the East Quad at TU Dublin, ready to chat again about what we got around to in culture lately, as well as what we're looking forward to getting around to over the next few weeks.
Indeed we are, and long-time listeners of Get Around to It will remember how we're two journalists and friends who love chatting about everything we got around to in arts and culture. Back in the COVID times, you might remember we had a podcast also called Get Around to It. Now we're back, bigger, hopefully better, right? Hopefully. And still loving to chat about books, films, TV, music, art, theatre. We'll also be bringing you things like our reviews and previews, interviews, just way more stuff. And it's absolutely great to be back. It's our second longer episode. Have you been happy with how everything's gone so far, Lauren?
It's so great to be back. I'm absolutely delighted with the reaction to our first two episodes so far. And yeah, that's a good point. If you haven't tuned in, you'll find our first episode on Acast, Spotify, Apple, all the places you get your podcasts. Everywhere. And we reviewed various things like TV series The Paper. We previewed the new Dad album. And we also had a deep dive into the series Girls on our podcast feed. So you'll find them all there.
Yeah, thanks so much to everybody who has been sharing those, spreading the word. Loads of people posting about it on Instagram, following us at Get Around to It Pod. It's been so nice to see the interest. I think there's definitely a lot of interest there in Irish arts and culture and in just having a show like this where we get to mix a load of things in together, which is really good crack for us to get to do as well too. So what can we expect on our show this week? Well, we'll be chatting about everything from what we know about the upcoming Taylor Swift album to our initial thoughts about the big Netflix series House of Guinness. What can we expect with that? It's arriving on Netflix very soon. And our diverging opinions on the series Alien Earth. Which one of us loves it? Which one of us isn't that impressed?
You'll have to wait to find out who likes it and who doesn't. I have also been chatting to one of my favourite songwriters of all time, Neil Hannon from the band The Divine Comedy. We should kick off with some arts and culture news. Well, will we talk about The Traitors first? I mean, we talked about The Traitors on our first episode. Have you been continuing to watch it?
I have been continuing to watch it. It's actually been really nice having a show to watch for 3 nights in a row. It's on quite late, right? But I like the routine of it. It's something to kind of chill out and relax. What I have really found is that like the Irish series, they're way more kind of manipulative and evil continually than any of the other series that I have seen. So I think what's been really interesting about it is seeing the reaction to it and the like really intense kind of idea of like there are baddies on this show and the traitors are really this and the other thing. And sure, poor Paddy, I mean, he lasted a lot longer than people might have expected on the traitors. But so far I am really enjoying it. I still do sometimes though find the tasks a little bit confusing. Sometimes I'm like, what? Like if I was on the show, I think I'd be like, sorry, excuse me, yeah, Siobhan, sorry, what are we actually doing? I find them very confusing and maybe a little bit muted compared to the UK. How are you finding them?
That is a really good point. I mean, the problem I had, as much as I love the UK version as well, the tasks were just really boring. I mean, like, obviously I know why they're there. There has to be some sort of filler to extend the episode to an hour. But I prefer obviously all the treacherous stuff, the bitching and the backstabbing and the round table stuff. But yeah, I find the tasks a bit dull. I would say that I am enjoying the Irish Traitors. I'm probably not as glued to it as I thought I would be.
Oh, really?
I've missed a few episodes and I haven't been seeking them out afterwards. So yeah, but you know, it's winding up this week. We'll find out who's going to win this week. So I will definitely be tuning in for that because you have to see who wins, right?
Definitely. And I'm really intrigued about who's going to be the winner. I think overall it's been a massive, massive success for RTE. I think it will absolutely be back next year for another season. There's no question about that. I think it has proved to them they can buy in a format that, like we were saying on our first episode, is originally a Dutch format, has been bought, you know, and shown across the world now. It's shown they can buy in a format, own it in an Irish sense and an RTE sense, make the production values equal to the production values of our nearest neighbour, the UK's show. And I think it's really good for Irish telly in that way, in the sense of buying in a format. The question for me is, will we be able to match that in terms of coming up with an Irish format that might actually be that good? We do have some history of formats, like Blackboard Jungle was sold across the world, but that's not quite the iconic show now that it might have been back in the day. It is hard to come up with an idea. I mean, you know, one of the people who came up with Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is Stephen Knight, who we'll be talking about later, who's involved in creating House of Guinness. Yeah, so like if you actually are clever enough and lucky enough to come up with a really good idea, you are sorted for life. But I think it remains to be seen whether or not we'll get that with an Irish one. But overall, like, boola boss to RTE. I think this could have gone, like, you know, this could have not worked out, and it did. And it feels like a good era, I think, for boosting Irish telly to just a level above maybe what it was.
Absolutely. It's nice to see Irish people on an Irish show, even if it's not strictly Irish, you know. So in terms of other stuff that's been going on in the arts lately, there was a big story that broke last week that might potentially have an impact on us all, I suppose. Can you maybe talk about the Jimmy Kimmel stuff and what's been going on there?
So I'm sure people will absolutely have caught up by now with all of the coverage of the Jimmy Kimmel situation, where he was suspended from his show, or his show was suspended because of his comments following Charlie Kirk's murder, particularly his comments about Trump and Trump's reaction, whether or not he was kind of mourning to a sufficient degree. Jimmy Kimmel is a comedian, so he has, taken the mick out of, every president that's been around since he's been working. And this has caused a huge amount of unrest in terms of in the States on both sides of the political divide, but also in the entertainment industry around the decision, why it was made, whether there are business factors to do with it, and what it says really. And I think this is what we're really kind of worried about generally, people in the arts and culture scene, is what incidents like this say about the idea of speech, free speech. That happened over in America, which has the First Amendment. We don't have the First Amendment in our constitution in Ireland. The First Amendment is supposed to allow people that kind of right to free speech. And because we're now seeing this discussion around who is entitled or who's allowed to say, this or that or the other thing, and what does the President of the United States think, and do his opinions on it then trickle down to affect that person's job, that is obviously hugely worrying for people who are in the entertainment industry in the US. And I guess the question here is, will we see a chilling effect from things like that happening in people in countries like Ireland, where we have a very different attitude to freedom of speech, and where comedians actually, ironically, even though we don't have the First Amendment, seem to have a lot more freedom to speak out, but also are speaking out about things in a very strong way. And I think that for me is connected to the idea of Sally Rooney not being able to appear or choosing not to appear at a UK awards ceremony last week, where she said if she turned up, what did you think might happen if she turned up at that award ceremony?
She said because she's expressed support for Palestine action, that she thought she would be arrested basically if she enters the UK, which is frightening to think that you can't have an opinion or express support for a certain group on, threat of being arrested. And her publisher from Faber collected the award on her behalf. She couldn't even attend the ceremony. So yeah, it's a frightening prospect to think that this could happen in this part of the world and in Ireland. Like Trump has been saying networks against him could lose their licenses if they continue to give diverging opinions, I suppose. But, there has been petitions and there has been support from various corners in the entertainment industry, which is a little encouraging to see. But it's frightening to think that, this could be the start of a slippery slope, I suppose, in terms of having freedom of the media rode back on.
Yeah, and whatever happens in the US has a massive impact on the rest of the world, whether we like that or not. And I think one key thing to mention as well about Sally Rooney is that, remember, she wrote the piece for the Irish Times where she basically said that she intends to use some proceeds from her works to support Palestine action. And that is definitely, I think, key with her fears around that, because it's the idea of whether or not she's receiving money with the intention of using it to support an organisation that's a proscribed organisation like Palestine Action is. And I think leading on from that, the thing about Sally Rooney is she knows she's in a massive position of power and privilege that other people aren't in, and she's very willing to use her position. Yes. She's actually willing to say, I'm not going to go to the UK in case something happens, but I'm also going to support Palestine Action, and I'm going to write about it in a national newspaper. A lot of, most other artists do not have that privilege. So I think people really respect the fact that she's actually willing to use her position just to talk about what she stands for, and then to actually stand behind them. I don't think you'll see a huge amount of other people necessarily following her footsteps, because there's actually a lot more to lose for other people, particularly people starting off in their career. So it's going to be really interesting, I think, to see if there's a chilling effect, like we were saying, on what people talk about if they intend on travelling to the US or the UK, how they feel about the idea of free speech, whether or not things they say might be picked up abroad in a negative way. It's very knotty, isn't it? It's a very, worrying time, I think, for a lot of people, isn't it?
It is, for sure. But in more positive news, it's not all doom and gloom. The Dublin Fringe Festival has been taking place over the last few weeks, and we actually managed to catch a few shows, both together and separately. We saw Shane Clifford's show, we saw Alison Spittle's show. Did you enjoy both of them, and what else did you see?
I really did, and it's interesting going from the idea of kind of a constriction on free speech to the idea of then sitting at the Dublin Fringe, which is a place where people can talk about and discuss all sorts of things. You have trans performers, you performers of all different backgrounds, and that is really, really lovely to see. And I thought that, Shane Clifford and Alison Spittle, they went to really dark places in both of their sets, didn't they? I mean, I don't want to spoil anything by telling you where they go, but I left them both kind of a little bit shook, but at the same time, they were both really, really funny, and they showed that thing of balancing humour with darkness. And I really appreciated how they both dug really deep into their personal lives and talked about really taboo topics on stage. And that's why we need people to be able to kind of use that ability to say what they want in a kind of positive, constructive way, which is what they are both doing. I was really impressed, particularly with Alison's show. She's going to be playing Vicar Street, isn't she, next year?
Yes, that Fringe run actually sold out. So she's announced a nationwide tour dates of the show, which is called Big, in February and April, including Vicar Street on April 11th. So do get along to see that if you're interested in really thought-provoking and, in fairness, downright hilarious comedy.
Yeah, you loved it as much as I did.
I did. I absolutely loved it. I think she's brilliant. So yeah, do catch her. And of course, Fringe winding down also means that the Dublin Theatre Festival is kicking off. It kicks off this week. It runs from September 25th to October 12th. And there's loads of great shows taking place. So do check out dublintheatrefestival.ie for the full listings. Personally, I'm looking forward to an adaptation of Chekhov's Three Sisters with Saoirse Monica Jackson, who you will know from Derry Girls. Druid's version of Macbeth with the always wonderful Marty Ray. And Bawn, which is Caris D. Coburn's reworking of a Lorca play called The House of Bernarda Alba, which sounds like it puts a very Irish twist on a very Spanish play. So there's loads of reworkings and reimaginings, and also obviously lots of potentially great original work too. So do check out that programme online.
I'm very looking forward to that as well. I have my tickets to Macbeth already, and I've always wanted to see Three Sisters, a Chekhov play. I've never seen it. I feel like it's a big gap in my knowledge, so looking forward to that one too. So we've got some previews coming up and a couple of reviews as well, but before we get to them, Lauren, you got to interview one of your all-time favourite musicians and songwriters, Neil Hannon. He was in Dublin to discuss the new Divine Comedy album, which is called Rainy Sunday Afternoon. Tell us about what it was like to meet him. I'm sure you've interviewed him before, right?
I have. It's not the first time I've interviewed him, and he's always just such a delight, just a really funny, sharp, witty guy. And of course, being Get Around to It, I had to ask him the three things he's gotten around to lately too. So here's what happened.
Hello, my name is Neil Hannon, and three things I've gotten around to lately are number one, 1984 by George Orwell, which I read not too long ago, basically in the aftermath of Trump's victory, which so depressed me that I thought, now that I'm down here, I might as well read something that I've always avoided because it's so dark. And so, and I'm always much more of a mid to early 20th century kind of guy. So 1984 was a bit out of my sort of usual reading. But I won't say I enjoyed it. It was hard work, but it was really, really satisfying and very brilliant. A brilliant book with far too many, parallels to the current situation. My next choice is 30 Rock, Tina Fey's unbelievably brilliant comedy, which you'll all probably know. I got around to this, not long after it came out, and Kathy and I decided it was the best comedy ever made. And then we've been getting around to it every 2 years or so since, just binging the whole thing. And we binged it over the summer again, and it's got better. It's just unbelievably well put together, and just more laughs per minute than anything else I can think of. My final pick is I finally listened to Mahler after avoiding him because everybody sort of went, oh, Mahler. I like a lot of classical music, and I'm more of a sort of Ravel and Vaughan Williams kind of guy, sort of pastoral, early 20th century. And Mahler's so German. And I was outside smoking my pipe, looking at the beech trees, and it suddenly made sense. All the music, it was just a magical moment. And thank you, Gustav. You're all right.
What's a good place to start for people who have no idea about Mahler? What would you recommend?
Start with a different composer, because I think if I'd listened to him, 20 years ago, I wouldn't have got it at all. He's seriously hard work. And my God, his symphonies are just like a week long. No, I'd say go listen to some nice Chopin or something.
Fair enough. So wait till Mahler finds you rather than you
Exactly.
find Mahler, basically. Yeah. And your new album, Rainy Sunday Afternoon, which is the 13th Divine Comedy album, is out on September 19th. Give us the elevator pitch on that.
Rainy Sunday Afternoon, melancholy, orchestral. It's the perfect album to put on a autumn afternoon when you've got nothing else on. Get a nice cup of cocoa, a woolly jumper, and yeah, you'll enjoy it.
It is an incredibly autumnal album, and there's a song about Christmas on there. Is that your bid for Christmas number one?
Accidental Christmas song. It's about a family trip we took on a Christmas when I was like 8. So, well, fingers crossed, but I don't know if that's possible anymore, really. It would have worked in 1978.
The campaign starts here.
Yeah.
He's such a great interviewee. And once again, that new Divine Comedy album, Rainy Sunday Afternoon, just came out last week. So do check it out if you're looking for some really sumptuous, sort of orchestral, gorgeous pop songs. And yeah, let's get that Christmassy song, which is called All the Pretty Lights, to number one at Christmas. So no more whiny folk artists at Christmas number one, please. Now I guess it's part of the show where we whet your appetite for some exciting culture coming up over the next few weeks. Will we talk about the potentially one of the biggest, if not the biggest, album releases of the year, I suppose, which is Taylor Swift's Life of a Showgirl, which is out on 3rd of October. Aoife, are you a Swiftie? Are you not? State your case.
I'm not a Swiftie, but before you all the Swifties listening, press stop and refuse to listen to any more of Get Around to It. I respect Swifties, and I kind of wish in a way that I was one, because I think there's something really lovely about like being a fan. I love being a fan of things. I guess Taylor Swift's never done that much for me musically, even though she has some like really good bangers. And I think if you get into her, she speaks a lot to people. Her lyrics are really personal. She writes about her life, lovely. I just guess musically it's not really massively my thing. I do think what's interesting is that she's back working with Max Martin, one of the iconic pop songwriters of our time, and Shellback, who she last worked with on her album Reputation back in 2017. We know there's going to be 12 songs on the record. One's got Sabrina Carpenter on it, which that's kind of like, gals supporting gals, isn't it? In a way, like Taylor Swift could have been like, I don't want, this like new pop princess. I don't want her. But actually, she's welcoming her into the fold.
And she supported her on a few dates of her Eras tour too.
Exactly. So I think she's like she likes boosting the gals, which I think is really good. Before we get a little bit more into it, are you excited about this record? Where are you on the Swiftometer? That's a new word. Just coined it there.
I would probably be similar. Like, I'm not a Swiftie by any stretch of the imagination either. So the news of this album didn't exactly like set my heart racing. But I will say that I saw her Eras tour last year in Dublin, and it was absolutely fantastic, absolutely brilliant. She knows how to put on a show. And I suppose the fact that this album it was recorded in the midst of that tour, like as you said, she recorded with Max Martin. She went to his Swedish studio between tour dates on the Eras tour. So I think it captures that energy of the live show being on the massive tour that it was. And hopefully it's a bit more upbeat than her previous one, which didn't do anything for me, the Tortured Poets Department.
Yeah.
Just a bit too, like, there was a lot of hand wringing going on, wasn't there? It was a breakup album, in fairness. So
that's it. What I think is really interesting about Taylor Swift and The Life of a Showgirl is the control that she's had over the rollout of the kind of marketing and publicity around it. So, the fact that she launched it on an episode of New Heights, which is her boyfriend or her fiance Travis Kelce and his brother Jason, their podcast, that she controlled everything around that in what came across as a very natural way, because she's very good at being very personable, should I say. That became one of the most listened to podcast episodes of all time.
Insane.
And it's absolutely crazy. So I think she's a really good example of someone who's in this space where she doesn't need traditional media in order for her to actually promote an album. As a result, she's kind of doing that thing where she drops a lot of Easter eggs, which she does throughout her records. And so the fans have loads to go on now about what they can expect about the life of a showgirl.
It feels like there's a closer relationship between her and her fans than any other pop artist, which is very clever. I'm trying not to be cynical here. She is a multi-billionaire at the end of the day. It is a business, like you said. But it's nice that, as you said, you wish you were a Swiftie. I kind of get that. Like, there's a nice relationship. You feel like you're involved in your idol's life to a certain extent, and you feel like you're in on the joke, you're in on the secret, you're in on the little Easter eggs that she's hiding here, there and everywhere. So there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, why not, you know?
Yeah, and I think two things that I would say. One thing is that I'm really interested about what the life of a showgirl is going to be about, whether or not it'll be like direct commentary on her being a showgirl during her Eras tour, because she recorded this record in Sweden while she was doing this tour. So is she actually going to definitively reflect on what life is like being the top star in the world on this intense tour, with all of that media coverage of you, with all that intense scrutiny of the relationship with Travis Kelce? Or is it going to be more of a personal thing in a different way? Is it going to be about the relationship with herself and Travis Kelce? And I do think another thing I would add as well is that she's managed to really sidestep being in any way political throughout pretty much her whole career. Maybe one or two examples where she's mentioned, encourage people to vote for certain people. And I think that she's really avoided a lot of the main political issues that are happening globally and in the US at the moment. And I don't know how I feel about that. When you have that much power, I suppose comes great responsibility. She could get a lot of backlash from it. I'm sure a lot of her fans don't share, democratic politics. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's about time that she actually said something about the state of the world? Or do you think her role is actually to just be a kind of a BAM against all of that real life?
I don't know. I'm conflicted. I mean, I think she is playing the game really well. I think she probably has more than a few splinters in her bum from sitting on that fence over the years. But yeah, it's a tricky one. Like, she's never been political in her music. That's her prerogative. She doesn't need to be. She's a pop star. All she needs to do is write really good pop albums and people will listen to them. What I will say is that just touched on what you said there before, the album might either be, about her falling in love with Travis Kelce, or it might be about her experience as a pop star in the industry. Maybe she could touch on the pressures and the political stuff in a subtle way in that way. So I hope it's one of those albums. I hope it's not a fallen in love album. I don't want to hear another one of them.
I'm not a big Travis Kelce gal, shall I say. We do know, before we move on, is that the opening track, The Fate of Ophelia, references the death of Ophelia from Hamlet. Second track, Elizabeth Taylor, is apparently about, of course, the iconic actress Elizabeth Taylor, who had a very tragic life in many respects and a really fascinating life. And the final song is called The Life of a Showgirl and features Sabrina Carpenter. I mean, you could do a whole show on Sabrina Carpenter and the way she markets herself, but we're going to have to wrap that up there. Let's go now from Taylor Swift, and we'll keep you updated with anything we discover about her record, to the House of Guinness.
So what can we expect from House of Guinness is a good question. We can't say too much about this because reviews are embargoed until closer to the day it's released, which is always a little concerning. You wonder why that's the case.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, I say as well, they're probably really, really closely guarding any kind of info spreading on this, because you want people to just watch the show and binge it.
That is very, very
that
true.
Yeah.
That's a nicer way of, rather than my cynical viewpoint. Do we need a series about the Guinness family? That is the question. By all accounts, it seems like they're an interesting family. It does kind of feel to me like it's a convenient time, I suppose, to lean into this global brand that's having a bit of a moment at the moment with all the, split the G nonsense and that sort of stuff going on with Gen Z. Guinness is, again, a cool brand amongst a certain generation, a younger generation. So it's interesting whether it's going to feel like a glorified ad for Guinness or not, or do we need a story like this? We'll have to wait and see how the series pans out. It seems so far very stylised, which is no surprise given that Stephen Knight, who you mentioned earlier, is the man behind it. He was also the man who made Peaky Blinders. So you can expect, lots of loud music, contemporary music, potential violence. It does have a cast of fine actors, I will say. James Norton from Happy Valley is in it. He's always great in everything. Louis Partridge, David Wilmot, Michael McElhatton, Danielle Galligan. So it's about 4 of the Guinness children, and the premise is their father Benjamin dies and they are waiting to see who will potentially inherit the business. I will reserve judgment until I see it, but I hope it's really good. I really hope it's good because it's potentially a great story to tell.
Yeah, and you know what? I think based on the trailer, if you're a Peaky Blinders fan, this is for you.
Yes.
I'm not a massive Peaky Blinders gal, shall we say. So I mean, it's massive, it's 6 seasons, huge, big show. I'm not saying it's a terrible show. It just didn't really do much for me. So it's just not my kind of thing. So I guess I'm interested in it from that point of view. But I do think it is clever to cover the Guinness family in that. I knew obviously they had a massive impact on Dublin, for example. If you look at like the Ivy Trust, Ivy Gardens, they're all under the aegis of the Guinness family through the Earl of Ivy title, or peerage, which is with them. But I kind of hadn't really known a huge amount about like the layers of the families and things like that. So there's a huge amount there for them to play with. I think there's definitely like Succession vibes, obviously, from what you're saying there as well too. I'm interested in whether it'll be very Irish or very Irish.
Yes.
It wasn't filmed in Ireland. It was filmed mainly in Manchester, doubling up for Dublin. Whether or not Irish viewers will notice those sort of things. Will they be leaning into like fact more than fiction? Is it a bit more crack to fictionalize things? I guess there's all those questions. So yeah, I am intrigued to see how this will go. One thing to add as well too is that Stephen Knight is actually going to write the next James Bond film, which is going to be directed by Denis Villeneuve. So staying with TV and staying with the UK, another series that's on the way, and we're both so excited about it. Oh my God, Lauren, I can't wait. Oh my God, it's Slow Horses. You a massive fan, you are, aren't you?
Yes, we are both fans, especially of Jack Lowden, who is brilliant. We love Jack Lowden.
Jack, congratulations on your new baby with Saoirse Ronan. They're like the cutest couple. Anyway, we should do a get around to dedicated to how great they are. This is a spy thriller series based on Mick Herron's books, and it follows the adventures/misadventures of the Slow Horses, a group of misfit MI5 agents led by the flatulent Jackson Lamb, played by Gary Oldman, rather disgustingly. They've been demoted. They're basically working undercover in a place called Slough House, hence the name Slow Horses. Can you remind us, Lauren, what happened in season 4? Because I can't quite remember everything that happened there. I know that Jack Lowden, though, had a big role in it.
He did. His story kind of came to the fore, and he is one of the main characters, but you went into his family story, I suppose. He discovered secrets about both his granddad, who was a former MI5 agent, and his father, the true identity of his father, who I won't go into it in case you haven't seen season 4, but it was jam-packed and it was really interesting storyline for him. So the last season was great. It's one of the few series on TV, I think, that is more or less sustained momentum. Yeah. I will say that it took me a while to get into Slow Horses. I love it now, but like I like the first series. I don't know if I like the second one as much. Yeah,
some of the series are less strong, I think, than other ones. But I think overall, it's so good that you kind of forgive it that.
It really is. So season 5, what we know of it follows Jackson Lamb, as you said, and his Slow Horses. They investigate a series of bizarre incidents in London, possibly linked to Roddy Ho's new glamorous girlfriend. And it's based, obviously, on Mick Herron's book, as you said. It's based on the book London Rules, which we know is about a series of terrorist attacks in London. And there's this polarising Eurosceptic politician called Dennis Gimble, who plays a big role in that book. And he obviously seems very similar to a certain British politician whose name rhymes with Bajal Barrage.
There he is.
So, yeah, it's an interesting, it seems like it could be really topical. It seems like it could be really reflection of what's going on in Britain at the moment. So I can't wait for this. And the good news is that even though we're only on season 5, it's actually been recently renewed for season 7 already. So
my God.
We'll be following the Slow Horses for a few more years to come.
Oh, I'm so excited. And the cool thing about Slow Horses is they record 2 seasons in a year. So I think part of the key for us fans is that we know we're getting more, and that like it really pumps out the series, and we don't have that thing where you're waiting like with Stranger Things for almost like 3 years for a season to come out. I know there's kind of Hollywood strikes and stuff related to that, but you just feel like you're getting like a traditional like series every year. It's really, really great. And I also would recommend the Mick Herron books if you haven't. I haven't read all of them. I've read 2 of his books and they were so good. I have to read more of them. Have you read any of them?
No, I haven't actually read any of them.
They're really, really great. They just have the same spirit. Like the show really captures their spirit of kind of like ramshackle thrillers. It's it's great. So we are big fans of Slow Horses here.
We absolutely are. So let's move on to theatre. Tell us about Poor, Aoife, which will be arriving at the Gate Theatre on the 2nd of October and running until the 2nd of November. It's based on a book by Katrina O'Sullivan, and I know you've interviewed her in the recent past.
I have, exactly. So I've interviewed Katrina a few times, and most recently for the Sunday Times, and people can find that on the Sunday Times website, thetimes.co.uk. If you search for Katrina O'Sullivan, you'll find it there. And yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if people haven't heard of Poor. In fact, I'm sure probably a lot of people listening to this have read it because it's been in the bestseller list basically since it came out in 2023. Myself and Katrina's books came out around the same time, and I remember meeting her at a presser for the book awards, and it was so exciting to see her book come out. I read it really quickly and I couldn't believe how how much she'd gone through, what she had achieved in her life. She's a really cool person. She's an academic now in Maynooth, and she's a psychologist, and she grew up in really, really, really tough situation in poverty with parents who had addiction issues. And this particular play, which is going to be on in the Gate from the 2nd of October until the 2nd of November, is based on the story and pour of her life, of going from growing up in the UK with Irish parents in those really difficult situations, getting pregnant at a very young age as a teenager, bringing up her son, moving on in her life, getting married and having more children, and starting her educational journey. Like, it's really inspiring. She doesn't shy away from the difficulties. I'm so intrigued about how this is going to translate to a theatre show. What we do know is that there are going to be actors playing the younger Katrina and the older Katrina, that there's going to be various other characters in the kind of ensemble around her. Music is going to play a big role. She said that Fleetwood Mac, her favourite band, are going to play a big role there, but it's not a musical. It's written by Sonia Kelly, a great playwright that people, are very excited about working on a show like this. I think a huge element of this that's really important is it's telling a working class story on the stage of the Gate, which is one of the main theatres in Ireland, that doesn't come from a working class background. The people who founded it, there's a lot of kind of Anglo-Irish figures, and a lot of people who are very privileged in Irish society were involved in setting up the Gate, and indeed in, impacting on Irish literature and theatre. And the Gate's based in Dublin 1, and it's based in a working class area, so more working class stories on Irish stages is great. And I think Katrina herself is really happy that her story's being told there. So let's get stuck into some reviews. We've given you loads so far on the show. Are you wrecked, Lauren, yet?
I'm exhausted. I don't know. There's a lot coming up, isn't there?
There's a lot. It's
busy.
It's a busy time of year. Let's talk about Alien Earth, which is on Disney+. Have you watched Alien Earth? What's your take?
I've watched enough of it. I think I watched maybe the first 6 or 7 episodes, so I'm not completely up to date. It has been released week by week rather than all in one lump, but I've watched enough to get a sense of it. And the sort of, I suppose, impartial view I have is that I'm really not sure about it. I know I'm doing a Taylor Swift here and sitting on the fence, but I think I wanted to like it a lot more because obviously I love the Alien movies, but I don't know how well the format, or the concept at least, because it is a standalone series. I mean, it's set, you'll explain in a minute how it's set before the events of the first Alien film. I'm not sure how well it transfers to a TV series format. I wonder, would it be better film?
Interesting.
Yeah, what do you make of it?
That's so interesting. So, well, first of all, I'll just let people know what it is before I dig into that. It's set in the year 2120. Corporations have taken over the universe. I mean, that sounds quite plausible. So, our dystopian future awaits us. And it's basically all about which corporation achieves total domination. And that'll be determined by which of 3 technologies basically wins the race for immortality. So the 3 technologies are cyborgs, which are enhanced humans, synths, as in synthetics, who are totally artificial, and hybrids, who are people who have synthetic bodies, but their consciousness is human, and that's been implanted in them. Meanwhile, you have a laboratory complex which is called Neverland. It's run by a company called Prodigy. The guy who runs Prodigy is called Boy Cavalier. Now, the name's a bit on the nose, right? But he's played by Samuel Blenkin, who's such a good English actor. You might have seen him in Mary and George. He's also in Atlanta, Peaky Blinders, Black Mirror. He's brilliant. He is the evil Elon Musk, basically, of style character of this world. And what he's managed to do is create these hybrids of people by getting children, very ill, seriously ill children's consciousness, and implanting them into slightly older young people's bodies. And so they are one of the group of characters that we meet. We meet them after a spaceship crashes on the planet where Prodigy is. And on board this spaceship are these alien creatures that become the aliens that we know in from the film Alien, the xenomorphs, etc. There's even way more going on there than I've even said. I've kind of tried to skim it. Yeah. I've tried to stream all the info into a kind of a very basic understanding thing. So I would say 2 things. One thing is that this really, really grabbed me. It's terrifying, scary, full of dread. It's visually incredible. Noah Hawley, who is the showrunner, does an amazing job of creating this world. It links back or links forward even to Alien, the original Alien and Aliens, while bringing us a new universe. But the other thing I will say is that the plot confusion and some of the questions I would have about where the plot goes as it continues on, that's the bit that I don't really love about it. but I kind of forgive it. I'm almost so entertained by it and so scared and grossed out and disgusted by it that like I'm not that bothered by the plot thing.
It's interesting that you're talking about being scared by it, really.
Yeah, I listen, I'm really, really
you scared,
squeamish.
Kat?
I'm really squeamish. I just found that it really got me. I was like, I don't want to see the xenomorph lad running around the place, tearing out necks and yeah.
That's one of the biggest problems I had with this, right? I love horror more than the average person, I would say. I didn't find it scary. I thought they showed too much of the alien. I think that the brilliant thing about the film is that, especially the first film, it's stalking Sigourney Weaver, it's stalking the crew. You don't see that much of it. You get glimmers here and there. The alien's in nearly bloody every scene in this show. That's an exaggeration, okay?
But it is very present.
It's very present. And I think you know what the alien looks like from the films. And it seems like it lessens the impact when it does have a moment to shine, if that's not... It
literally is shining though, because Xenomorph is a very shiny creature.
And wet and greasy looking thing.
It's also very human looking. You can see the person in the Xenomorph costume. Did you kind of notice that it's very human?
In a bad way?
No, not in a bad way. More in a like, ugh, like that's a person in there. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe, I don't know, I find that a bit gross. Yeah. So for you, it's not that scary.
I didn't find it that scary. Like, I didn't hate it, okay? Like, that's damning it with faint praise. I didn't hate it. I just wanted to like it more. I think it could have been a better film, or a better two films. It could have been a two-part film. They probably wouldn't have felt a need to squash so much plot into a series, maybe, even though I know that sounds contradictory because it's 8 or 10 episodes long. Yeah. So you should be able to play out a story like that. It didn't work for me. Like, I will finish it for sure. I want to see what happens. I didn't really like any of the characters either. Like, I didn't feel like there was a character to root for. Even Wendy, she's the kind of one that you're supposed to be rooting for, that she is the consciousness embedded in the synth, and her connection to a possible human that's still on Earth, who is also actually, by the way, Alex Lawther plays him. Brilliant. He's in the new Leonard and Hungry Paul film.
Is he?
Which I didn't realise he plays Leonard, I think.
Oh my God, great actor.
Yeah, great actor. There are some great actors in it, but not great characters, maybe. That's the distinction.
The actors are so good that they make characters like Boy Cavalier, who is quite cliched in some ways. He literally is a cavalier boy, man-child kind of thing. But because the actor Samuel Blenkins is so good in that role, he lifts him out of cliche and lifts him out of, kind of, okay, yeah, we get the point, into this more complex character. I feel like this year I've struggled to connect with a lot of series that I've watched for various reasons. And for some reason, I think this really, really grabbed me. And maybe it just grabbed me because of the reason why the film Alien is a classic film, is just the concept of these horrifying aliens stalking people in space, and the dystopian elements and the ties that there are to our current era, where it's like, yeah, corporations probably one day will consume the earth. And I think then to end, I think my final point would be, I think there's some very interesting elements in it in terms of like the AI human relationship, because we are moving towards a world where things like synthetic, creations are actually a possibility, and I think we are asking more questions about AI. And we are seeing people having relationships, quote unquote, with ChatGPT. There's the themes there. We can see where things can go wrong. And we have that space in fiction and sci-fi to explore the absolute, the kind of the apex of the terrible things that can go wrong there. So I think it does a good job there. I really enjoyed it. I totally understand why it's not for you. Let's go from the small screen to the big screen. You have seen this film called Recreation, which is directed by Irish film stalwart Jim Sheridan, who's played such a massive role in the Irish film industry. What is this film about? I have not seen this. Recreation is its name.
So this is a really interesting premise for a film. I think most Irish people are familiar with the really terrible murder of French woman Sophie Toscan de Plantier, who was really brutally murdered at her holiday home in Cork in 1996. And of course, English journalist Ian Bailey, who died last year, was considered a prime suspect for a long time. He was arrested twice, never charged, due to insufficient evidence, although he was convicted in absentia in a French court for the murder after they failed to extradite him from Ireland. So basically, the story of this case has fascinated Irish people for 30 years now, nearly. It's been told in multiple forms over the years, including the brilliant West Cork podcast and Jim Sheridan's own 2021 documentary, Murder at the Cottage. So he's clearly a man fascinated with this case, because now this new film, Recreation, basically imagines what might have happened had the jury deliberated if Bailey had been brought to trial. So we see the jury's argument in real time in in the jury room as they kind of debate the facts, I suppose. So it's an interesting premise. I think it really works. I think it's very thought-provoking. It's really well done. I think there's some absolutely excellent performances. John Connors is absolutely brilliant as one of the jurors. Vicky Creeps is amazing as well. And Jim Sheridan himself is actually in it as well. He plays the foreman of the jury. So there's loads to like about it. I think it's well worth a watch.
Wow. I mean, Jim Sheridan is a legend in Irish film. You know, he's behind In the Name of the Father, My Left Foot. He's got, 6, I think, Oscar nominations. There's been some mixed responses to some of his later work. For example, I think The Secret Scripture didn't get the world's greatest reviews. Where do you think Recreation sits in his oeuvre?
He's done some really bizarre stuff over the years as well. I don't mean bizarre as in bizarrely bad, just really stuff you wouldn't expect. Like he did the 50 Cent movie Get Rich or Die Trying. Everyone forgets about that.
I had forgotten that.
I guess,
oh my God, I completely... No, I haven't seen that film either, but oh my God, maybe that's one to watch.
Versatile if ever there was a filmmaker. So
wow.
I suppose this is something a bit different. It's based to some degree on a real life incident, or at least it takes its starting point from a real life incident. You know, I will say, like I said, it's very well executed. There's some great performances. It's definitely worth a watch, especially if you have an interest in this case. It's maybe not Oscar worthy. You were saying how many times he's been nominated for Oscars. You know, I think Jim Sheridan is still extremely capable of making very good films, and this is one of them. So yeah, definitely worth a watch. It's out on October 3rd and it's called Recreation.
Yeah, interesting. I always think about this with the Sophie Toscan du Plantier murder, just this idea of this kind of industry around what happened to her and how often her story has been retold, and yet there's been, you know, no kind of line drawn under exactly what happened to her, shall we say, and it's tragic. But that sounds very, very interesting. So let us move from film to music. And Lauren, you've been listening to the new Sprints record. Tell us all about it.
I have indeed. So Sprints are a brilliant Dublin 4-piece. They released their debut album, Letter to Self, last year. This new album is their second album. It's called All That Is Over. Sounds like a fairly bleak title, I think we could both agree. But yeah, I suppose it's kind of about drawing a line in the sand under what they've been through over the last couple of years. They've been on tour a lot over the last couple of years. Letter to Self was really successful, but they were on the road for most of last year. And a lot's happened to them personally as well, including the departure of one of their founding members, Colm O'Reilly, who left the band last year. They got a new guitarist, Zach Stevenson. Frontwoman Carla Chubb had a really bad breakup of a long-term relationship, and she started a new relationship, and there's the kind of, I suppose, utter chaos and war and political turmoil that's happening at the moment, feeding into their songwriting as well. So it's definitely a darker, it's heavier album for that reason. If you like songs like Literary Mind from Letter to Self, I wouldn't say that there's no equivalent on this album, but it's definitely a deeper, darker sound this time around. But it's absolutely brilliant. It really reminded me of the Swerve Da Fontaine's DC, who are a band they're compared to a lot. They took, with their second album, A Hero's Death, people were kind of expecting a certain album of them, and they came out with something different. I think Sprints have done the same thing to an extent, and there's loads to keep coming back to. There is, as they say themselves, also a thread of hope in there. It's not completely dark, it's not completely bleak, not quite songs to listen to in the fetal position maybe, but songs that shake you by the lapels, let's say.
That sounds fantastic. And you interviewed them as well recently, didn't you?
I did indeed. I had a great chat with Carla, who's the front woman, as I said, and Jack, who's the drummer from Sprints. You can read that in the Irish Times, I believe, this coming weekend. But as well as talking about the album, I asked them both about the cultural highlights they've gotten around to recently, and they had some really interesting picks, actually. So you can listen to that now, and All That Is Over is released on September 26th. It's a brilliant album, and here's what happened when I spoke to them.
Hey, this is Carla from Sprints, and some things I've gotten around to recently is this book called Lamb by Lucy Rose, which has been sitting on my TBR for months and months and months. I've heard so many things about it. I just passed Debray, I think, and saw it in the window and just was enthralled immediately. It's incredibly gothic, gorish, and just abject and disgusting, but I loved it. It's brutal and scary. It's basically about cannibalism. So if you're into that kind of thing, check it out. A band that I've finally gotten around to listening to is, I don't know if it's going to get me criticised, but Deftones. I never really got into them. I never really gave them any time, but I've been listening to the new album a little bit, and yeah, I'm definitely going to go back and check out the rest of the discography. Really loving that. And a TV show, I started rewatching Breaking Bad, which is so cliche, but I didn't like it when I first watched it, and everyone keeps telling me I'm wrong, so I've gone back to start it again, and I'll let you know, but I probably think I am right, that it's not that good. But we'll let you know, controversial, but anyway, that's what I've finally gotten around to.
This is Jack from Sprint, and some things I've gotten around to recently are the film Weapons. I heard a lot of good things about it beforehand and didn't disappoint. I remember I heard similar things about Longlegs, and then went to see it and absolutely hated it. It was like, I thought after the reveal it just fell flat in its face, whereas Weapons didn't do that. It was like absolutely ridiculous but hilarious, and had a few good jump scares, which is everything you want from a film like that, so I was very happy with that. A book I've gotten around to recently is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin, which I just had never read, and absolutely loved it. It was it was heartbreaking, but kind of beautiful as well, and nice. And then an album is Cutthroat by Shame, which just came out. I think it's the best album they put out in years, and it just has a lovely kind of bouncy feel throughout, and I look forward to seeing it live.
Excellent. And speaking of albums, your own album is out on September 26th. What can you tell us about that?
It's loud, it's gothic, it's melancholic, but it's also a lot of fun. I don't know if I'm like curse, I was about to just there.
You are.
Okay, it's a lot of fucking fun. And we can't wait to play it live. It's called All That Is Over. And yeah, it's our sophomore album. Can't wait to bring it on the road.
No sense of difficult second album when it came to writing or recording? Yeah.
Don't think we gave ourselves enough time to worry about it, so we just want to keep running until the road stops, basically. Sprints pun intended.
It's certainly darker than your debut letter itself. What's that down to?
I think it's down to kind of the dystopian reality of the world. I think it's down to the chaos we all live in. I think it's to do with the disillusionment I think a lot of young people are feeling with their governments, their societies, and with life, and maybe sometimes the lack of prospects. But in the end, there's a real hopeful thread in it. I think the arts and our communities are super important. It's a big love letter to the queer community, the trans community. I think it's a big love letter to the music community and how important the arts is for us to feel connected and in touch with our empathy and humanity.
That was Sprint there telling us what they got around to lately and giving us some insight into their new album, which is out on the 26th of September, called All That Is Over. You got anything interesting coming up over the next week, culture-wise, you wanted to flag?
Yeah, I actually do. I did two very different interviews last week that should be in the papers this weekend. One of them was with Mattress Mick.
Wow.
Who is bringing out his memoir soon, very soon, at the end of this month, or the start of October actually, sorry. And the other one was John Banville. I interviewed John Banville. Ooh. One of my favourite interviews I've done in a long time.
He is an icon for the old interviews.
He absolutely is. Gives great quote, that man. Really interesting interview that's going to be in the Sunday Times at the weekend, so do check it out. What about yourself?
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to be I've got a few interviews coming up, but I'm going to be in Kinsale at Words by Water, the Kinsale Literary Festival, on the 4th of October. It's a Saturday. I'm going to be talking alongside Dara Fleming about her book. So I'm going to be talking about social capital and social media, the mad world we live in now, and how we behave on social media. So if you're interested in that, I have details on my Instagram at sweetoblivion26, and it should be a lovely day. And sure, who wouldn't want a little trip to Kinsale? It's such a pretty place. I like to imagine that I'm living in one of the fancy houses whenever I go there.
That's all for us on Get Around to It for this episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please follow us on Instagram at Get Around to It Pod, and please also like, share and review this podcast, because that really helps us spread the word.
It really, really does. Thank you to the people who've been commenting on our episodes and saying nice things on Spotify in particular, listening in on Apple and giving us lovely 5-star reviews. Keep it coming. We really love it. Thank you. So do please spread the word with any of your pals who are also curious culture fans. If you're an art maker or culture creator and want us to know about what you are doing at the moment, we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a mail at getaroundtoitpod@gmail.com.
We really appreciate you guys for listening. Thank you again. And also thanks to our engineer Rory Mulligan and TU Dublin for the use of this brilliant studio space.
And a big thanks to Landlovers. They gave us our theme music, the very jaunty song Cinema Bell from their great album Confidants. And we'll see you next time.
For anyone else, they would have stayed awake for anyone else.